Throughout biblical history, men betrayed one another. Some lied out of greed. A few went so far as to sell allies for silver. But only a small number committed betrayals so visceral that their names became synonymous with absolute cowardice. What separates an ordinary lie from a betrayal that echoes across millennia? Dishonesty is documented throughout Scripture, but certain betrayals carry something deeper, something rarely addressed in sermons, a cowardice so complete that it destroyed not only lives, but the very fabric of trust that holds peoples together. From Judas delivering Christ for 30 pieces of silver to David sending Uriah to certain death on the front lines after sleeping with his wife. These are the most cowardly betrayals in the Bible. Judas Iscariot, 30 pieces of silver, a kiss that changed history forever. Judas was one of the 12 apostles of Jesus. He controlled the group's finances, walked daily beside the Messiah, and witnessed impossible miracles. For 3 years, he had direct access to the man who claimed to be the Son of God. He ate with Jesus, laughed with him, slept in the same camp. Matthew 26 records the moment. Judas sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver and handed him over with a kiss in the Garden of Gethsemane. A kiss, the universal gesture of affection, turned into a signal of betrayal. That act led directly to the crucifixion. It was not a distant enemy who betrayed Jesus. It was someone from within the inner circle. But here is the brutal detail. After Jesus was condemned, Judas tried to return the money. He realized the weight of what he had done. Matthew 27 says he threw the coins into the temple and went out and hanged himself. He could not live with his own cowardice. Judas represents betrayal, hidden in proximity. He had everything, chose 30 coins, and paid with his own life. If Judas betrayed out of greed, our next betrayer used something even more powerful: seduction. Delilah, the woman who uncovered the secret of one of the strongest men in history and sold it to his enemies. Delilah was not an Israelite. She lived in the valley of Sorek, Philistine territory. Samson, the judge of Israel, fell in love with her. Judges 16 makes it clear. The Philistine rulers offered Delilah 1,100 pieces of silver each if she discovered the secret of Samson's strength. Delilah agreed and began to manipulate. She asked 3 times what the secret was, and Samson lied 3 times. But Delilah persisted. She used guilt, tears, emotional pressure. How can you say you love me if you don't trust me? Eventually, Samson gave in. He revealed that his strength came from his hair, a Nazirite vow to God. Delilah waited until he fell asleep. She called a man to cut Samson's hair. When he awoke, his strength was gone. The Philistines captured him, gouged out his eyes, and chained him like a beast of burden. Delilah's cowardice lies in calculated coldness. She did not love Samson. She used him and then watched as he was tortured. If Delilah betrayed for money, our next betrayer did something even worse. He betrayed his own father, Absalom, the son who stole the heart of the people and tore the throne from his own father. Absalom was the son of King David. He was handsome, charismatic, and extremely popular. 2 Samuel 15 describes the strategy. Absalom stood at the city gate and intercepted people who came to bring their cases to the king. He would say, "Your claims are valid, but the king has no one to hear you. If I were judge, I would give you justice." Piece by piece, he stole the hearts of the people. After 4 years of building loyalty, Absalom proclaimed himself king in Hebron. David was forced to flee Jerusalem, the very capital he had conquered. The betrayal was not impulsive. It was planned, meticulous, cold. The most cruel part: David loved Absalom deeply. Even during the rebellion, David ordered his soldiers, "Deal gently with the young man Absalom for my sake." Absalom died in battle, caught by his long hair in a tree, and David wept as if the world had ended. Absalom shows that unchecked ambition destroys even blood ties, and that the most painful betrayal comes from those who should love you. If Absalom betrayed out of political ambition, our next betrayer acted out of pure personal greed. Achan, the soldier who stole what belonged to God and caused the death of 36 innocent men. Joshua 7 records the story. Israel had just conquered Jericho through a miracle, but God gave a clear command. Everything in the city was to be destroyed or devoted to the treasury of the Lord. Nothing was to be taken for personal use. Achan disobeyed. He saw a beautiful Babylonian cloak, 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold. He took them and hid them in the ground beneath his tent. Joshua 7 says that the Israelites were unfaithful, and because of this, God withdrew his protection. In the next battle against the small city of Ai, Israel was defeated. 36 men died. Joshua was devastated. God revealed that there was sin in the camp. When Achan was exposed, he confessed, "I have sinned against the Lord." But it was too late. Achan, his family, and everything he owned were stoned and burned. Achan's cowardice lies in selfish greed. He knew the command. He saw what God had done, and still he stole, and others paid the price. If Achan betrayed for material gain, our next betrayer acted out of pure avarice. Gehazi, the servant of a prophet who lied for money and was cursed with leprosy. Gehazi was the servant of the prophet Elisha. He walked beside alongside one of God's most powerful men. He witnessed miracles, resurrections, the multiplication of food. He was being trained to become a prophet. 2 Kings 5 tells the story of Naaman, a Syrian commander who was healed of leprosy by Elisha. In gratitude, Naaman offered valuable gifts. Elisha refused everything. He said, in essence, the healing comes from God, not from me. But Gehazi thought differently. He ran after Naaman and lied. My master has changed his mind. 2 young prophets have arrived. He needs a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing. Naaman gave him double. Gehazi hid everything at home and returned as if nothing had happened. Elisha asked, where have you been, Gehazi? He lied again. Your servant did not go anywhere. Elisha replied, my spirit was there. Now Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and to your descendants forever. Gehazi went out leprous, white as snow. Gehazi shows that cowardice can destroy an entire future. He had everything he needed to become a prophet. He chose to be a thief. If Gehazi betrayed out of personal greed, our next betrayer committed the very first betrayal in human history. Adam, the first man, the first act of disobedience, the first attempt to blame someone else. Genesis 2 records God's command, you may freely eat from every tree of the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was a simple rule, a single prohibition in a perfect garden. Eve was deceived by the serpent and ate. Adam was not deceived. 1 Timothy 2 makes that clear. He ate knowing exactly what he was doing. He chose to disobey. But Adam's true cowardice appears afterward when God asked, have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from? Adam replied, the woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree and I ate it. He blamed Eve. He blamed God. He did everything except take responsibility. Adam did not only betray God's trust, he betrayed Eve by shifting the blame onto her. And when confronted, he hid among the trees, literally too cowardly to stand and face what he had done. Adam shows that the first reaction to sin is always the same: hide and blame. Human cowardice began in Eden. If Adam betrayed out of weakness, our next betrayer acted out of envy and paranoia. Saul, the king who tried to kill the man who saved him dozens of times. Saul was the first king of Israel. God had chosen him, anointed him, and empowered him. But 1 Samuel 15 records that Saul disobeyed God, and God rejected him as king. David was secretly anointed to be the next king. When David killed Goliath and became a national hero, Saul should have celebrated. But 1 Samuel 18 says the women sang, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Saul became furious. From that day on, he looked at David with suspicion. Saul tried to kill David multiple times. He hurled a spear at him twice. He sent soldiers to David's house at dawn. He hunted David through the wilderness for years. And ironically, David had 2 opportunities to kill Saul and refused both. He said, I will not raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. Saul's cowardice lies in destructive paranoia. David was loyal. David loved him. And Saul tried to destroy him because he could not bear being surpassed. If Saul betrayed out of envy, our next betrayers acted out of collective jealousy. Joseph's brothers, 10 men who sold their own brother into slavery and lied to their father for more than 20 years. Joseph was the favored son of Jacob. He received a special tunic, had dreams pointing to future greatness, and lacked the restraint to keep those dreams to himself. Genesis 37 is blunt. The brothers hated Joseph. They could not speak to him peacefully. One day, far from their father, they plotted to kill him. They threw Joseph into a dry cistern and sat down to eat while he cried out for mercy. Genesis 42 confirms that years later they still remembered the anguish on Joseph's face as he begged, and they ignored him. Judah, one of the brothers, suggested selling Joseph to Ishmaelite merchants for 20 pieces of silver. They stained the tunic with goat's blood and presented it to their father. Jacob mourned for years, believing Joseph was dead, and the brothers let him. They watched their father suffer in silence. Joseph spent years as a slave and a prisoner in Egypt, but God was with him. In time, Joseph became governor of Egypt and saved those same brothers from famine. When they realized who he was, they fell to their knees in terror. Joseph wept and said, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Joseph's brothers show that group envy is more dangerous than individual envy, and that forgiveness can be greater than betrayal. If Joseph's brothers betrayed out of jealousy, our final betrayer committed the most calculated and cruel betrayal of all: hired murder. David, the man after God's own heart, who coldly planned the death of a loyal soldier to cover up adultery. 2 Samuel 11 records the story without filters. David saw Bathsheba bathing, summoned her to the palace, and slept with her. She became pregnant. The problem? Her husband, Uriah, was away at war. David tried to cover it up. He brought Uriah back and attempted to get him to sleep with his wife so the pregnancy would appear legitimate. But Uriah was too honorable. He said, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab is in the open fields. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and lie with my wife?" He refused. Then David did something monstrous. He wrote a letter to Joab ordering, "Put Uriah in the the front line where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him, so he will be struck down and die." And David sent the letter by Uriah's own hand. Uriah carried his own death sentence. Uriah died in battle. David married Bathsheba. He thought he had gotten away with it. But 2 Samuel 12 records that God sent the prophet Nathan, who confronted David with a parable. When David understood, he collapsed. "I have sinned against the Lord." David's cowardice lies in using power to conceal sin. He had everything and risked everything to hide a lie. Uriah was loyal, upright, and was murdered for it. David shows that even the best men can fall into the vilest cowardice when they try to hide their failure instead of confessing it. You have just encountered 9 of the most cowardly betrayals recorded in the Bible. From Judas, who sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, to David, who murdered a loyal man to cover up adultery. Each of these betrayals reveals something deep about human nature: greed, ambition, envy, paranoia, pride. But they all share one thing in common: cowardice, the refusal to do what is right when it comes at a cost. The Bible does not hide these stories, it records them as warnings, because betrayal rarely begins big. It begins with a small lie, an omission, a compromise, and it grows until the moment you look back and no longer recognize who you have become. But there is hope. Peter denied Jesus and was restored. David confessed his sin and was forgiven. The difference is not in never falling, it is in what you do afterward. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. And in the comments, tell me which of these betrayals do you consider the most cowardly. Thank you for watching. See you next time.